align yourself with people who believe in your mission, whether that's your investors, whether that's your partners, whether that's your crew, whoever it is. Because if you can align everybody on your team to your mission, then everybody has the same goal.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Today's host is Matt Chastain.
All right, we're back at the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. Excited today, I've got Joe Sanders with us. Joe is an executive producer with Intrigue Films, here to talk about a really exciting film that as a person of a certain age, I'm a kid of the 80s, basically. I'm kind of excited to talk to you about this. So, Joe, before I introduce you, I just want to thank you for joining us today and taking some time to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's tell everybody who you are. So you're an EP with Intrigue Films, which is an independent production company dedicated to creating high-quality, faith-based films that inspire and engage audiences. You've worked on One Hit from Home and Grace Wins. You're currently producing the upcoming feature, what I'm really excited about, a very original faith-based film that's set in the 1980s, and the first feature to feature the music of Petra, one of the most iconic Christian rock bands in history. I love Petra. You're also the owner of Relevant Elephant, which I could say that 3 times fast, as a digital marketing agency, and the author of Stop Posting, Start Marketing. You know, as a marketer myself, I like the title of that very, very much. Your work combines creativity, strategy, purpose to reach an audience nationwide. So, Joe, let's dive right in.
That was quite an intro, man. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it.
I read every word. It's a well-written intro. So
I could tell.
Word for word. I didn't mispronounce anything, even though I'm from the South and we tend to do that from time to time. So,
Okay.
Well, you've done some cool stuff that we'd all recognize. One Hit from Home, Grace Wins. But I really want to talk to you today about Beyond Belief. Those of us, like I said, from the 80s, we were raised on the music of Petra. So how did this whole project even start?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we were, everybody's got like those, films you want to make. And at one point we felt really inspired to tell a story about hearing God's voice and following what God says to do, even if it's an impossible task. And so we, my team and I brought an idea to the guys one time. I said, what if we tell a story, kind of like a faith-based story, kind of like Field of Dreams, where this kid hears this voice. So it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. So we developed this for a long time, and we were calling this movie The Marathon. And it was about this kid who heard this voice, and he felt like he needed to run this marathon. And one day I woke up and I called the guys and said, you know what? I said, this movie should be in the 80s. I said, there's no faith-based movies that take place in the 80s. And so everybody's like, okay. So then we're going down this development road. And I said, well, if we're going to make an 80s faith-based movie, we're going to make it authentic. So I went on this Spotify rabbit hole, man, and I just listened to every 80s Christian band I could find, every song. Scarmo Key, Res Band, Striper, Brian Duncan, like you name it. I just went through all of it. And, Petra, of course, is sort of the darling of that generation. And the song Beyond Belief, which I know is their most popular song, I just kept listening to this song over and over and over again, like probably 1,000 times. And I went to the guys and I said, listen, guys, not only do I think this is the best song of this, at least in my opinion, of this era, I said, you guys won't believe the lyrics to this song. This is what our movie is about. And everybody was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So what, Joe? And I said, well, I wonder if Petra would do this movie with us. And everybody's like, okay, whatever, Joe, go figure that out. We'll stay in the real world. You go see what you can do. So I went down my sort of what producers do sometimes, which is you throw stuff against the wall, you see what you can find. And I went on this little journey to find Petra. And Petra really at the time wasn't doing anything. They had been retired. And this was about 3 years ago. And I was trying to find Bob Hartman. And it was very hard to find, and finally I did. It took me a long time and I found Bob Hartman, and I got on the phone with Bob Hartman and I said, Bob, listen, I am not calling from Hollywood and I don't have any money, but I've got this idea for a movie. What do you think? And so I kind of told him what we were going to do. And he just said, in the way, if anybody knows Bob Hartman, and He just said, okay. And so that's how this whole thing kind of came around. We started building this movie around the music of Petra. And so the movie's not about Petra, but we took Petra's music and we put it in the movie. So even though it's a modern faith-based movie, the soundtrack of the film has featuring all these Petra songs, and we infused them throughout the entire movie. We had a blast. And I, through this time of these last few years, Petra, John Schlitt, and Bob Hartman, and all the guys, have become, I'm humbled to call them friends. They've welcomed us. They've partnered with us. We went on tour with them. We've gotten to know them. They've been amazing. And sometimes when I even sitting here telling you about it, it's still sort of a dream to me and actually what's happening. So obviously we call the movie Beyond Belief.
Beyond
and
Belief.
That's kind of where we're at.
So typically for those listening, when you make a phone call and you say, hey, giant rock star, I'm a guy you've never met. You've never heard my name. You don't recognize me at all. I want to make a movie with you and I don't have any money. The next sound you hear is click. So that's a miracle to be able to connect with him despite the honesty of that intro.
Absolutely. And Bob is, Bob Hartman is iconic. Petra is iconic. Bob is one of maybe the most respected person in contemporary Christian music. When I was talking to people, when I was trying to find Bob, he was hard to find. And I'm good at finding people. They said, Joe, everybody loves Bob. Everybody loves Bob. Everybody respects Bob, but Bob is retired. Bob's not doing this anymore. It's over. He's never going to do it. And I said, all right. And I like so many things that happened during this movie. You're totally right. And what you're explaining is, this is just, this was a divine intervention. This was God's leading me. And you're right, because there's no other reason for them to want to do this than just believing in the fact that God led us together and that, that means something. And so it's been that sort of a journey for us the whole way with this movie.
Sounds like the plot line of the background of this movie is the plot of Sing 2. They got to go get Bono.
Yeah, right. It's funny when I talk to people about Beyond Belief, and maybe you were going to ask this question, I'll usurp you a little bit. Every once they're like, oh, so you guys are making a movie about Petra. And that's what everybody thinks, which I understand, because making a movie about Petra is a really good idea. That would be a really interesting, great movie, right? But then when I tell people, I go, no, it's actually not about Petra. We made a movie with Petra. We made a movie about a kid in the 80s who likes Petra. We made a movie about a kid in the 80s who's growing up with Petra's music, right?
So Petra becomes a character in the movie.
Yes. Petra.
I find that more interesting, honestly, than just a.
We wrote Petra into the movie. This kid, he's got a Christian rock band in the 80s, right? He likes Petra. He goes to Petra concert. He does all these things. And what's interesting, I got to tell you this straight away. I totally underestimated Petra. I mean, I knew Petra was a big deal and I knew they were iconic and all this stuff, but I can't tell you, I underestimated how grandiose this idea. It's almost like a myth, this sort of thing of Petra. And there's a whole generation. This is really interesting. There's a whole generation of people who grew up in the church in the 80s, right? And this has never been put on film before. There's been a few Unsung Hero was in the 80s. Now that came out, last year. So we were already in production. So I will give him credit.
Right.
There's another movie called Electric Jesus that you might be familiar with. That wasn't
a good friend of mine was in that movie.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily a faith-based movie, but there's never in history been a movie that has a Petra song in it.
Because they focused on Stryper and Electric Jesus.
Yeah. And just think about that for a second. Now I know Petra made the video album, the Beyond Belief, the video album, right? But that was like a short movie. There has never been a movie, secular or Christian, ever, that has ever had a Petra song in it before. So
I love it.
When we talk to, Capitol Records and Curb Records, they're like, huh? They're like, what? You want to use what? We're like, we want to use Petra's catalog. And they're like, go for it.
Now that's kind of amazing, because when I know for a fact when you're doing a independent film and you're scraping for the budget, the most expensive part can be getting the licensing for the music, because you got to pay. A lot of people don't know this. You got to pay performance rights and you got to pay publishing. And a lot of times, two different companies own. One company own the publishing, one company will own the record, and they'll play off each other. What does the publishing want? Oh, they want 15. Then we want $15,000 too per song, right? So each song's $35,000. and that can just kill your budget. So the
Yeah,
fact that you were able to have access to their catalog for this movie, I think that's a miracle in and of itself.
it is. This is another God thing. It was a thing we have Bob's permission, blessing, which goes a long way. Don't get me wrong. In this business, that means something to a lot of people. But sure, we had to get the record companies to agree to let us use music. We have to pay for that and all the things we had to do. And we were able to do it. And we're blessed beyond measure to have this film coming out. Because I think what's really going to be really fun about this movie is that it is a modern faith-based film. It's made for the modern faith-based audience, but there's a whole generation, like my son, I have a 13-year-old son, and this is going to be the introduction to the younger generation of Petra. This is going to be like, hey, like, those bands that you listen to, like, we're kind of on third generation now, like with the Forrest Franks and the Lauren Daigles, but the John Coopers and the Bart Millards and the Mac Powells, they were all Petra fans, all of them.
100% they were.
The only reason they did what they did was because of what John and Bob and Gray Volz did, right? And John Lowry and those guys. So we're like now saying like to these kids here, like in the 80s, Christian music, it was different than it is now. It was elusive. It was powerful. Not that it's not today, but it meant something was different back then because there really wasn't a lot of, especially from a rock perspective.
No.
Most people's kids' parents wouldn't even let them listen to Petra because they thought it was like rock and roll can't be music. And that's what Petra did. They made rock and roll music, Christian rock and roll music, that the church would then play. And it was the first time. And it's important and it means something.
I saw Petra, I was probably 9 years old, and we went down to Macon, Georgia, to the Macon Coliseum. I mean, there were 10,000 people in there. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, those guys put on a rock and roll show. They were rock stars, but they were also evangelizing. It wasn't cheesy or forced. It was just really great rock and roll. 80s rock and roll, mind you, but it was rock and roll.
So when we got, about a year into this process, Petra decided to go on tour, and they're like, we're going to go on tour again. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, how can we help? They're like, you guys can come with if you want. So we actually went on tour with Petra. We didn't do all their shows, but we got to show up and promote the film and have a booth and talk from the stage. And
did you play the trailer for the audience?
Well, we had like our crowdfund video, played that stuff. But again, back to the underestimating the power of what Petra meant to that generation. When we would meet people, because we interviewed people at the concerts, and people don't come up to you and tell you what their favorite Petra song is. That's not what they do. They don't come up and say, oh, let me tell you what my favorite Petra album is. That's not what they do. They come up to you and they say, this music changed my life. Wow. They say, this is the music that changed my life. This is the soundtrack of my childhood. I mean, thousands of people, and we only went to like a handful of shows. It's amazing the power. I remember when we were very fortunate, we were in production on this movie last fall, and John and Bob came to set for a couple days, which was amazing, right? And we did some media while we were there. So we had some people from Chicago media and Christian media come. And it's the same story because some of these people had never met John and Bob. They've been in Christian music media their whole life, never met them. And when they're interviewing them, after they're interviewing them, they're crying. Or they can't handle it, that they're just like, they're trying to communicate to them what it meant to them for what they did with that ministry. It's amazing. It's powerful. And we're so honored to just be able to share a little bit of that with the next generation.
I got to tell you, it's very clear when you're talking to a filmmaker who is not just passionate about his project, but this enthusiastic. Because at this point in the process, you've gone through pre-production, you've gone through all the difficulties of getting there, you've gotten there. Are you done with post now?
Almost. We're almost done. It's almost done.
Well, this is usually the part where you've pulled all your hair out, but you're not doing that. You're still enthusiastic about this. So that's a very, very good sign about what's to come on the screen.
Well, thank you.
You're still in a good place. Well, let's talk a little bit about the story, though. So It's kind of a field of dreams for a youth set in the 80s to the music of Petra. Mm-hmm. That's what I got so far. Tell me a little more about the story.
Absolutely. So we pitched it as, it's kind of Field of Dreams meets The Karate Kid. That takes place, in the 80s. And when you say that enough times to people, and eventually it makes sense, because it really doesn't make much sense. But essentially the story centers around this young kid who's growing up in the 80s, and he wants to be a rock star like Petra. He lives in a small Midwestern town, and he has a band. So there is actually original music also in this film. So he has a band because he wants to be like Petra. And he is, kind of going through his trials, and his dad dies, and there's things are going on, and he's trying to get out of this town, and things like that. And somewhere early in the film, he hears a voice, and this voice is telling him one word. The voice tells him to run. So throughout the story of this movie, this boy is now dealing with the fact that he is trying to be this Christian rock star, and he's dealing with all these things that are going on in his life. But he's heard this voice. It's very mysterious. He's the only one that can hear it. And he is now having to understand, who is saying this to me? Is this God talking to me? Is somebody playing a joke on me? What does this mean? And he kind of goes through this process of trying to figure out, what does this mean? And he kind of lands on the idea that this voice is leading him to run a marathon, which is something that he cannot do. He can't run a marathon. To him, it's impossible. Then our movie sort of becomes the Karate Kid, in the sense that our boy, he finds somebody that's going to help him learn how to do this, and he's got to go through those trials. And ultimately ends up, you're probably not going to be expecting how this is going to end. But at the end, the point of Beyond Belief is that God calls us to do things that we are not qualified for. He calls us to do things that are impossible. And we see this in the Bible all the time, Noah and Moses and Joshua, right? And I think, if you read between the lines a little bit and how these stories play out in the Bible, you can picture some of these characters. And sometimes it's in there, some of this nod of like looking up at God and just being like, why are you asking me to do this? I am not qualified for this. I cannot do this. And God's response to looking down at us is like, yeah, I know, you're right. You can't do this.
Yep.
You're not qualified to do this. But that is not why I asked you. I asked you to do it because I will go before you. And if you do what I say, then your enemies will be made footstools at your feet. And so this whole movie is about faith versus reality. Are you going to trust faith? Are you going to hang on to faith? Or are you going to just go by what's 5 feet in front of your face and what you can see? We all have to make that choice. I think we all get the nudge. If we're Christians, right? We have the Holy Spirit living inside of us, and that Holy Spirit speaks to us, right? And sometimes it asks us to move mountains, and sometimes it asks us to just, hey, go say hi to that person on the street, or go give that homeless person $1, whatever it is. And we struggle with that, right? We get that in our head, and God's speaking to me. What we're trying to say in this movie, like what this boy has to go through, is, hey, listen, here's the message. This is the vision that was put on our heart that I think God wants to get the word out to people. Say, listen, why don't you just take a step in that direction and see what God might do?
I'm sold. Where do I buy tickets? I'm ready. When's it coming to a theater near me, right?
Yeah. No.
When's the trailer coming out? Because I'm already intrigued by your description of the story. Obviously, you got to get the post done, and then you'll send it to the trailer people. But I'm ready to see a trailer now.
So everything's in process. Like I don't want to say because I don't know yet. Like I'm going to tell you is that the movie's in a really good place. Everything's being in process. I know everybody's asking us this all the time, and I understand.
Especially your investors. When's this going to get done?
Yeah. I would say it's coming. We're getting there. And I would say just keep an eye. We're pretty active on social media. We post a lot. We give information. So I would say keep an eye on that. It's coming. Everything's coming. When you're doing a film, and you can appreciate this too, you got to be really careful with how you release your film and how you release information about your film. And my team and I, we really believe, and as I'm sure maybe you can kind of sense, we believe that this movie is really something special. We really think there's something here. We feel a great responsibility to telling the story. We feel a great responsibility having Petra involved in this project. And we are being incredibly diligent and good stewards with everything we've been given. We've been blessed beyond measure with this project. And we're just trying to make sure that everything we do is done as best that we possibly can. And that's all I can tell you. But it's coming.
No, that's great information. It's on the way. So I always like to find one moment in these conversations where I kind of go ding, 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 ding. Future filmmakers out there listening to this is a great lesson, because when you are in post-production, especially on a project like this, there are going to be people, whether it be a goofy podcaster or your investors, typically, who are going to be pushing you and pushing you. Why isn't this done? Why isn't this done? And there is a tendency, you want to push yourself through and just, I got to get it done. But you really have to hang on. And obviously you have to work diligently, as you say you are, and be good stewards, but you can't rush that process. The process has to play itself out in order for you to get the best product on the screen, because you don't want to get to final cut and have to go back and redo things. Once you start putting it into research phase, you want to have it as best you can. So listen to Joe's description of his patience with this. Wandering in the desert for 40 years in post can feel like that, but you have to get it as perfect as it can be.
Absolutely. It's good advice. I would layer this in there too. This is the third film we've done, and we're incredibly blessed with the people that we work with on our projects. And we're a very small company. We've never even had a movie in the movie theater before, and we're just a smidge in this industry at the moment. But I would stress to young filmmakers who are trying to do this, align yourself with people that believe in your mission.
Yes.
Align yourself with people who believe in your mission, whether that's your investors, whether that's your partners, whether that's your crew, whoever it is. Because if you can align everybody on your team to your mission, then everybody has the same goal. And you will avoid some of the issues that you're talking about, which are very real, right?
Yes.
And so on Beyond Belief, I feel we have been, again, I think I've said it 3 times, we are blessed beyond measure because every person who is involved with this project has the same goal. And we are all in this for one reason only, to tell the story, to inspire people to follow God's voice. That's what we're trying to do, and doing it in a very entertaining way. But you are absolutely right. This process is very tedious. When you're an independent film company, you are limited. I mean, everybody's limited to an extent. When you're an independent film company, you have limited resources, you have limited time, you have limited, everything, and you have to make the most of what you can. And it can be a very daunting process, but I'll tell you, as hard as this is, we made a period piece as an independent film. The only thing we could have done that was dumber than this, put animals and a baby in it. I mean, that's pretty much it. I can say very confidently, as hard as this was, everybody who worked on this, we'd go back and do it again.
I love that.
In a second.
You said everybody's got to be aligned in the mission. I think I would add to that, everybody also has to be aligned in the creative vision. So if you've got everybody aligned in the mission and the creative vision, and I'm going to add to that, you've got to have leadership up top who is as enthusiastic about it as you are, because that's what creates the culture. That's what aligns everyone to the mission and the vision, is that you, as the executive producer and the director, the producers, you guys have to have this kind of enthusiasm for the mission of the project and the vision of the creative. That's what lines everybody up underneath you.
No, you're right. And again, like what we did, what we're doing, and how this is all going, we could not have done this. We have felt God's favor on this. I know people say that all the time. It got to be to the point where it just became hilarious what was happening on our film set. It was like undeniable.
Okay, well, I need some examples. I love these stories. I hear these stories all the time.
There was, man, how much time do you have? I'll give you a couple quick stories. I mean, there was one time we were shooting in a location, and the location said, "Oh, we need like $5,000 more money." And we're like, "What?" And we're there, like it's production day, like number 20 or whatever. And so I'm just like, all right, okay, I guess we need to pay this extra $5,000. You guys have to go figure out where it's going to come from. I walk outside, and we have a crowdfunding platform that had been on. We hadn't really been using it very much because we were in production. And as soon as I walked outside, I got an email from our crowdfund. The exact money we had just spent at the venue had shown up. I'm not kidding. I'm not, this is not hyperbole. And I remember I looked at it, and my producer, Dave, who and I were dealing with this issue, I said, "Dave, be quiet. Look at this." I held my phone up, and he looked at me, and I'm like, that just happened. There was another time where we lost a location. We was the day before, we were like, it was like, I don't know, 5:00. And we were supposed to film at this location the next morning. And it was a location that was going to be not only a shooting location, but also storage location for the next month. It was a pretty important thing. We had worked all this out. There's something happened, and it was 5:00 the day before, and we didn't have it. We literally lost it. And we had to be there the next morning at 6:00. We were on day like 3 or 4 of production. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I had somebody, we were in this great little town in Illinois that was incredibly helpful. And I called them and I said, "What are we going to do?" And they said, "Well, call this person." So the secretary, this gal really helped it, who was somebody at their office who's incredibly helpful, said, "Well, I may have somebody who can help you." So she said, call this guy. He's got a warehouse. So I call this guy and I'm on the phone and I'm talking about as fast as I'm talking to you right now. And I'm like, hey, listen, we're making a movie and we need a place to store these cars and we need to do performance process and we need to be there like tomorrow. And I'm going on and on and on. This guy just stops me. This is like 20 minutes later we lost this location. He just stops in the middle of it. He's like, listen, it's fine. You can use it. I'm like, what? He's like, just come over. And so I went over there and I walked in there. It's like 5:30 now. This happened at 5. Now it's like 5:30 and I'm walking in this place. And I'm not making any of this up. And the guy looks at me. I don't know this guy. I just met him on the phone and he looks at me. He goes, Joe, are you just talking about me? You seem really stressed about this. I said, yeah, I am. He goes, you're okay. Don't worry. It's fine. This whole place is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. Let me give you the key. Let me show you where you're at. And that's what we used for the next month. It just kept happening over and over again. Because the challenges of making films, you need things like that to happen. But some of the things that were happening to us, when you call your team and they're like, hey, assistant director, we're not going to that warehouse. Where are we going? We got a different one. And we're like, what?
How?
How did you do that? I'm like, I have no idea how we did it. It's just God looking down on us.
You know how it happened. You know how it happened.
It's God looking down on us and just being like, you know what? I really want you to make this movie and you guys keep messing it up.
Okay, lesson number 2 then that I'm hearing from this, ding, ding, ding. If you're a producer and an unexpected expense pops up, it's probably a good idea to look to God to cover that and not to your marketing budget. Because that's what usually happens is you drain the marketing budget from unexpected expenses.
Yeah, well, we did that too, but
yeah,
it's just all in all, to be where we're at with all the things that did happen on the set over and over again, it's just amazing stuff. I tell you, everybody wants the movie to be successful, right? Everybody wants to be able to show it to people and talk about it. And, should Beyond Belief become successful to the point where people actually do want me to come out and talk about it, I really can't wait to share these stories of, hey, you have no idea how we could not have done this because we're not good enough. We couldn't have done this.
Just like the story of the kid running a marathon.
Well, that's the thing. That's my story because I'm not a filmmaker. I have no experience doing this. I heard this call about 15 years ago and it's a long story. And I just said, I'll go. I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll go. I'll see how this works. And, this happens, that happens. And that is what the story is.
Hey, like you said, man, Abraham was too old and too rich and comfortable to leave and go have a bunch of children. But yet, when you heed the call. Joe, tell us how we can kind of follow you. What are your social media handles? We want to follow this project.
We're everywhere, man. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're everywhere. So if you just go to those places, you can go to intriguefilms.com. We have, I think it's beyondbelief.movie. We're not hard to find.
If I get on socials and I search Beyond Belief movie, you'll find it.
We encourage people to follow us and IMDb. We got all our stuff on there. So want to check out some of that. We're trying to be as proactive with that as we can to keep everybody involved in the process.
It'll happen in God's timing, brother.
Absolutely. Yeah, soon. It's coming.
Good.
It's coming.
That's awesome. We can't wait to see it. You know what? When it comes out in theaters, we'll try to have you back on and we'll talk about the actual hardest part of filmmaking, which is marketing and distribution. Ooh. So you got your work cut out for you, but it sounds like you got the type of film that's set up to succeed. So Joe Sanders, thanks again, man, so much for taking a little time and talking to us today on the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. If you've been enjoying this podcast, take a moment to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you can leave a tip at faffpodcast.com/support. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.